Alright, so today we're going to look at a couple of different games. The first one that I'm going to show you is a shooting game, and let me just show you how it plays out here. So I have Captain America shooting at Red Skull. Every time I hit the space, I fire off. If I lay down on the space, it does not continue firing. I'll show you how that works in a second. And then again, if I end up missing, I have lives up at the top there, and they count down, and when I get to 0, it is game over. So let's take a look here at a couple elements. First of all, I'm hard coding, or I'm using variables for now for my width and height so that I could change them easier. You'll see 3 different images that I'm importing: the hero, the weapon, and the villain. And I create a couple of different things up here so that I can pass them between some different methods that I have. Now, one thing you'll notice I have a weapons and a villains array list of nodes. I have a whole bunch of variables that I start. The dweb, that's a delta, so that's how fast the weapon's changing, how fast the villain moves. This modifier and this villain count modifier, scores and lives. I'll explain those in a little bit. Similar to how we moved before with the go north, go south, go east, go west. I also have a throwing variable, and I use that so that you can't just continuously hold the space bar down. So a lot of this should look similar, creating the different images. Okay, I also am creating a text for scores and lives, and I add all. So I'm using this add all command. So instead of having 3 different places to add the children, I can add all and just separate them with a comma. When this game initializes, I move the hero to the middle, and I set up my board. Okay, so now, again, most of this looks familiar. I have this space that's a little bit different this time. And what the space does is it's basically looking to see if you're already throwing. When I do throw, it sets this motion to true, and that gets set back to false only when I release the spacebar here. So that's how I make sure that you're not just laying on the spacebar the whole time. And what happens is, when I hit the spacebar, I need to essentially create a new weapon. And so I create that weapon here. I locate the weapon right here. And what I'm doing is I'm saying, okay, get the hero's X layout plus the hero's bounds and their width. So I'm going to start it at the edge of the hero and go to the same Y location. Okay, then I add it to my weapons array list, and I add it to the board here, and throwing is true so that I can not throw again. So again, similar to what we saw before, if I let go of the button, I stop moving. I set it up, and now here's my timer animation. So doing a couple things. So first of all, looking to see if I'm moving, if I have go north, go south, go east, go west moving, then I set a delta for those. Add my villain counter, and what this villain counter is doing is it's basically adding a new villain to the board. So similar to what we did before, adding a villain, puts it at a random Y location at the maximum width right here, and adds it to my list, and adds it to the board. And what I have, one thing that I do a little bit differently, I had this modifier. So I'm basically doing modifier on this, and then that modifier counts down until it gets to 20. If it gets to 20, then it stops at that point. But what this does is it'll essentially over time speed up how fast the villains come out, so that the game will progressively get a little bit harder as you go. Okay, and then once I get my villains on board, I have my weapons throwing, and I have my hero out there. I just need to move everything along in my timer. And that's basically what this does. So it moves the hero. It's using a method to check there. I check to move all my weapons, I check to move my villains, and I check to see if there's a hit. And then at the end, I check to see if my lives are equal to 0. And if they are, I'm printing out this game over, and I am basically making game over a little bit bigger. Okay, so let's look at a few details here. So again, move hero to, this is where I'm doing a check. So I've passed it where I want to move the hero to, and I'm checking to see if I can actually fit the hero in that location. So I'm basically only moving the hero if he does not go out of bounds. And if he does go out of bounds, I basically just ignore the move for that turn. Now the move villain, these villains are already created above, and so I just need to increment each one of my villains. And so what I'm doing is I'm looping through my whole villain array, and I am essentially checking to see if the villain is still on the screen. If they are still on the screen, I am moving them off. And if they are, I'm sorry, if they're still on the screen, I'm moving them by that delta amount, which I passed over here. And if they're not on the screen anymore, then I come over here and I say, okay, take the villain off, take them out of the array, reduce my lives by 1, and then go back and update my lives text so that I can see the new live score. Okay, so again, just moving the villains from right to left and removing them once they get to the edge of the screen, but that's how I do that. Throwing a weapon, again, I've created the weapon at the hero location. Now I'm just taking each of my weapons and moving them. So here I find out where they are, and as long as that's less than the width of the screen, I relocate them by that delta amount, and then again I pass the delta in. You see the same delta in each of these, but that's set up above, and I pass that in. Otherwise, if it's off the screen, I just remove them out of the array. Finally, I have a check hit method, and what this is doing is it's basically looping through every one of my weapons and seeing if any one of those weapons intersects any one of my villains. Since I don't know how many shots I'll have on the screen or how many villains I'll have, I need to check each one of them. So I'm looping through the number of weapons and the number of villains. I'm using my get bounds of parents and checking for an intersection with get bounds of parents for the villain. Then you can see if there is a hit, I remove the villain and I remove the weapon, and I increment the score up by 1. So that's basically it. Again, I'll scroll back up through here so you can see the code that I'm using, and we'll go back and take one more look at how the game plays out. And go from there. So again, if I hold down the spacebar, nothing comes out. I have to release the spacebar before I can actually fire my next weapon. I don't have anything in here that actually checks to see if the villain collides with Captain America. I could possibly add something like that to check as well, and then have that be a losing a life event as well. But that's all for today. Thanks.